All right, hello and welcome to History Sec 4 Review Capsules. This is the first one in a series of about 20 videos, plus there's practice videos. So just a reminder that these videos are a summary of each part, and even though they cover the most important stuff, there's still a lot that you'll have to go and look at because this class has a lot of content and we can't cover everything in these videos. So you should also know that if the video is moving too quick, you should pause to study the documents and you should maybe rewatch a few of these videos if stuff moves too quickly. All right, so chapter 1, part 1. We begin with the Act of Union in 1840. So here is the territory, Lower and Upper Canada, united to become the province of Canada. So why did this happen? So Lord Durham was sent to Canada to investigate the causes of the rebellions, and he recommended in his report to resolve the conflict between the French Canadians and the English Canadians by uniting. The main aim, however, was to assimilate the French by making them a minority. So economic considerations, especially for Lower Canada, who was now taking on the debt of Upper Canada. There were other disadvantages for Lower Canada, which we will take note of. So your little summary there, 1840, creation of Province of Canada, when Upper and Lower Canada merged, became one. So the political structure of the Act of Union is when we see one single legislative assembly forming with both Upper and Lower Canada having 42 seats, 42 members each. However, Lower Canada had a larger population, but equal representation to Upper Canada. Therefore, Lower Canada is underrepresented in the Legislative Assembly. So for document 6, this is the Act of Union, a very important document. I would recommend pausing the video at this time to study this document. Okay, so you can see the Legislative Assembly has 42 members. They each have 42 members, even though which one has a greater population? Lower Canada. So this is unfair to Lower Canada. So in terms of the French Canadians being a minority, they were also made a minority because English was made the official language of the province of Canada, not French. Here you can see the territorial change, so you can pause the video there to study the two different documents. The early years of the province of Canada, we see political division. There's two groups. We have the Reformers and the Conservatives, known as the Tories. They have an election in 1841. They secure a majority, and what do they want? Well, their common goal is to achieve responsible government for the province of Canada. So this alliance, very important. It's Baldwin and LaFontaine alliance, and their goal is to achieve responsible government. So what is that? You can pause the video there to learn a little bit more about these two. So responsible government, they wanted London, Britain, to grant the province of Canada ministerial responsibility. This would mean that those in the Legislative Assembly would have to approve the choice of the members of the Executive Council. So meaning that these members would have to be accountable for, they would have to answer to those in the Assembly. So this is what responsible government looks like. So 1848, 8 years after Act of Union, we see the Legislative Assembly. You see that arrow pointing up. Why? Because the members in the Legislative Assembly, the leader of the majority party, is able to appoint who works in the Executive Council. So why is this important? Because those in the Executive Council are the ones who are the ones proposing bills, developing policies, etc. So good time to pause the video to study this very important political structure. How does it function? Well, like I said, the change was in the Executive Council, who are now chosen by the Legislative Assembly. Other important thing to note is the Governor General's veto power has been eliminated. So Baldwin and LaFontaine made several changes. They reestablished French as a language of use. So this was good for the French Canadians. However, a few things angered the English Canadians. Significant laws were passed. In 1849, amnesty was granted to the Patriots to forgive them for the rebellions, and they were granted money, so compensation in the Rebellion Losses Bill, which was given to the victims of the rebellions. What happened? Well, it led to a lot of anger by English Canadians who, infuriated, set the Parliament building in Montreal ablaze. It's important to note in terms of the economy, so an economic factor at this time is what is called the abolition of British protectionism. So in 1846, Britain stopped protecting Canada's economy, and basically Canada was left to find a new trading partner. So they would have to turn to find a new trading partner since they no longer had preferential tariffs. Another important thing to note is the Bagot Commission, which created reserves in Lower Canada. So reserves are territory that is set aside for First Nations but controlled by the Canadian government. So the government's goal in doing this was to set territory aside and promote sedentarization, so to promote this idea of staying in one place rather than a nomadic lifestyle. Okay, so practice questions. I know that was quick, but let's test your knowledge. So we're going to use document 7 to explain how the French were made a minority under the Act of Union in 1840. Pause the video. So the French were made a minority under the Act of Union because English rather than French was made the official language of use. So what economic change is document 2 making reference to? Pause the video. It is making reference to the end of British protectionism. You can see in the last sentence, gone are the days when Britain would protect us with special tariffs. What was the Reformers Alliance common goal? What was Baldwin and LaFontaine's common goal? Well, it was to achieve responsible government for the province of Canada. And indicate the number of the document that corresponds to the political structure of responsible government. So which one is responsible government? Is it document 1 or is it document 2? Pause the video. And it is document 1, and you can see a change in the Legislative Assembly to the Executive Council. These two documents are very important to note, so this would be a good time to pause the video and make sure you understand the difference between document 1 and document 2. And there is your summary of part 1. Next time we will cover part 2 of chapter 1. And I'll see you there.